Welcome to the Plant Cunning Podcast,
where we explore our relationship to plants, other people, and the mysteries of nature.
Coming to you from the high Allegheny Plateau in central New York.
We are your hosts, AC Stauble
and Isaac Hill. Welcome to another Plant Cunning Podcast, and today we have Lisa Fazio returning. We first interviewed Lisa two years ago, and she was working on the book Della Medicina at the time, and now it's getting published. So we're really excited about that.
Yeah, and congratulations, Lisa.
Thank you. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah. How are you today?
Great. Doing great.
And so we've also been very lucky to know Lisa in person, and Lisa, you've been at two of the conferences, the first two conferences we had.
Awesome conferences.
Thank you.
Yeah. And really incredible to have them because we're in central New York around Utica. Mm-hmm. And which I figured out when we did I didn't even realize you guys were here. And so we did the first podcast. And then it was like, oh my gosh, we're in the same basic region. Yeah.
Basically neighbors, anywhere out here within an hour is a neighbor.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Your class on Italian folk medicine and magic was one of the most requested classes. People who missed it last year were like, please bring back Lisa, so I think
and then somebody brought their whole family this time.
Yeah.
They
were so excited.
They came the first one, and then they came back with their mom and dad and
aunts and friend, adopted aunt. Yeah.
Actually, I've got the mom gave me a charm I'm wearing.
Oh,
that's so cool.
Yeah, it was really funny because I was saying, it's just kind of good practice to because you're supposed to get charms through a gift, right? You're not supposed to buy them for yourself, even though I've done it and everybody's done it. But ideally, somebody gives you your charms, and I said, so it's just kind of a good practice to keep some charms in your pocket and literally she's like she came out with a handful of charms.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow, that's so cool.
Yeah.
He's a practitioner.
Yep, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Yeah, so I wanted to ask you about your trip to Italy. So right. I'm going to start from that. So before the conference, you had just come back from a trip to Italy, and we didn't get to chat about that. So I was curious if you wanted to say any highlights from your trip, or did you go anywhere new this time, or see anything that was inspiring?
Yeah. So this trip in particular, part of the intention for this trip was that this is the first time that I brought a group. People have been asking me for years, and always was like, I don't know if I can do that, but I did it with a partner, Lupo Passero. We collaborated. She's an Italian-American herbalist. And we brought a group of people to the Benevento region, which is where my grandmother was from. And so it was a big success.
Nice.
And a lot of fun. So we were there primarily in Benevento, which is in the Campania region in the Apennine Mountains. So I'd been there before. The new place I went north, which I haven't spent much time at all in the north. And we did go, Rome. I've been to Rome several times. We spent some time in Rome, and then went to Florence, which was the first time I'd been in Florence. I actually have some family there. They're Calabrese. They're from Calabria, but now they live in Florence. So I'd always wanted to go there. Florence was very crowded. And much more expensive.
Yeah.
Than what I'm accustomed to in southern Italy. Also really amazing. But what I really enjoyed about it was getting out, because my cousins live out of the main, centro, they live on the outside of Florence. So I got there and ended up being able to do some hiking in the mountains with my cousin, who's a survivalist in Tuscany. And
oh, cool.
Yeah.
Sounds so fun.
Yeah.
Any plants that you met along the way in Italy this time?
I mean, yeah, all of them: olive,
Ooh,
rosemary, red valerian, which is one of
red
my
valerian.
Yeah, red valerian. It's not like valerian. I'm still learning a lot about it. I've like spent a lot of time with it, but it gets a beautiful pink purple
Oh,
flower.
Jupiter's beard as well. I think I
Is
tried to
that
grow.
that one? It might be.
Mm.
Yeah.
I tried to grow it and I didn't succeed,
Mm.
but I'll
Um,
try again.
well, I don't think it would grow well in this climate, I'm guessing.
Probably, yeah. It's
So
fungal.
yeah, this that's the thing, that it's really hard here to recreate a Mediterranean environment so that I can have all these amazing plants. Some of them work really well, garlic, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, we did some hiking with some local like botany plant people in the Apennines and saw like this just wild this I don't know what species it is, but it's just wild garlic like
Mm.
everywhere.
Ooh,
So
so fun.
So what that are those the kind of things that you did in the journey, like go on plant walks and see? Did you see like some sacred sites or
yeah, so we did some plant walks, hiking, we did some medicine making. We had some meals made for us by some local nonas, delicious home cooked meals. We went to some sacred sites. Some of them are secret sacred sites I can't mention, where the Ianera, so the witches in Benevento, the word for witch. So the Italian word for witch, standard Italian. So this is something I don't know if everybody knows or is aware that the Italian language is new as the standard language of Italy because Italy was not a nation state until 1860. And so before that, it was a bunch of different regions. There's actually the South was the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies. Then once they united, became a nation state, they chose basically a standard dialect, which was the dialect of Florence.
Mhm.
And then that became the national language.
Mm.
So the Italian word for witch is strega,
Mhm.
but every dialect they're called dialects, but they're really different languages, has their word for it. And in Benevento, it's Ianera, Janara. Plural is Ianera with an E at the end. So it's some of the famous places where it's said that they met and had either gatherings, and of course, the Witches' Sabbath that
Mhm.
was held supposedly on the banks of the Sabato River, which goes through the city of Benevento, where the famous noce or the walnut tree of Benevento was said to have grown, and they had their Sabbath around the walnut tree. This is a very famous Sabbath that even in the trial transcripts from the Inquisition, they have recorded where some of those on trial said, well, I took we did the unguento or the flying ointment to fly to the Sabbath in Benevento. So the legend has it that witches from all over, not just Italy, even other places in Europe, met at this particular Sabbath in Benevento.
Cool.
Yeah. So there's nobody knows exactly where this walnut tree was, but there's people there's some ideas, some good guesses about where this walnut tree was. So we go to those places, which by the way, nobody even knows where this originated. There's a few ideas about that. One is that it was a ritual of the Longobards, who were Germanic people who actually invaded Italy.
Mhm.
And they settled that area of Benevento. And so there's one possibility is that like this particular Sabbath was part of a tradition of the Longobards. And then another one is that it goes back to the rites of Isis because there's a temple to Isis that was in the city of Benevento.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah. Or it could even been synthesized between both of those.
Probably
Yeah.
for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. So the river is also is named Sabato.
Sabato River. There's actually two rivers. There's the Calora River, I think it's Calora River, and the Sabato River. And there's a big legend around the way these rivers come together because they form a Y, and then And then like that location is one of those that they think maybe the walnut tree. And of course now there's a chapel in that location.
Of course. Yeah.
Because then this all, this did, once Christianity came in, none of this stopped.
Right.
Right.
So, and there's people there that are still, there's a museum, there's a Yanua museum that is,
Cool.
in Benevento. And so, people there are recreating and pulling together all the pieces to keep the history going forward.
So is the Sabato River called that because of the Sabbath?
Well, I'm
Is it vice versa?
sure. It also means Saturday.
Right.
Huh.
But so it's all, those are connected. The place and the name of the place and the name of the rite are all connected. Cool.
Do you think you can tell us a little bit more about what you've learned and researched about the history of Italian folk medicine and magic in general? Like what a day-to-day practice might look like for, an Italian folk magic practitioner?
So the word Italian folk medicine, Italian, like we talked about already, is Italy is a nation state that only came into existence in 1860. So Italian folk medicine is not a standardized thing.
Right. Okay.
And most of the practices are a synthesis of, well, okay, so it's going to be different in the United States or in other diasporic locations. So like in Italian American culture, you've got neighborhoods, right, where the Italian immigrants settled, and they came from all different regions of Southern Italy. All these different regions had their own language, had their own practices, similar but different, their own sauce recipes, everything was different. And then they all moved in together into like basically the same areas. And so for us in diaspora, we have a different experience. We have more of a synergistic experience depending on how intact like the lineage is. So for me, most of what I learned about Italian folk medicine and growing up came from my nonna, my grandmother. And that was really a direct line because on my no side, my grandfather's side, I didn't get a lot of that. There was some of it, but not as much. Definitely came from that one line, which was the Benevento line. So each family is going to have their own way of doing things. So one of the ways that this could look like in terms of practices is like the most popular is the riti di Malocchio, which is the rites of Malocchio or the Malocchio cure. Some people call it fa Maloc to make the Maloc. Italian American dialect, we say Maloc. We drop a lot of times Italian Americans drop the vowel at the end. It's Malocchio. So every family in an enclave coming from different places in Southern Italy will have a different secret prayer. And these secret prayers would be passed from, depending on the region, could be, usually it's going to be elder to younger, but a lot of times it's grandmother to granddaughter, but in some regions it switches, like it'll go from like grandfather to granddaughter, from granddaughter to grandson. It could go from an aunt or uncle to a niece or a nephew. So it could do that. Usually it's going to be in the same family, but they're all going to have a different way of doing it. It's all slightly different. So there's like, I don't know, hundreds probably of methods.
Yeah.
And then even within those methods that are similar, so like the most popular is the oil and water method. So like if you look up Malocchio on YouTube, you're going to see a lot of times, either a cup or a bowl of water and somebody dropping oil into it. So even within that, you're going to have very different practices. So how the oil gets into the water, what else you may use, like whether you're going to use like scissors or a match or salt or possibly an herb to get rid of the maloc, how you're going to read. So you're reading the way the oil lands in the water. So it's really a form of divination. And so the shape and the way that the oil comes together or not is going to be read differently by different practitioners. So like that's a practical example, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But again, like there's not going to be anything that's like standardized about it.
Yeah. So how did you address that, or how did you work with that in writing a book like this, where you're talking about a tradition of the Della Medicina? Yeah, like are you taking the most popular and most generic things, or are you doing like lots of little things from different traditions, or just
Your own
most
direct
expounding
experience,
your
yeah.
Mostly it's my direct experience that I don't, so some things I don't like my family practices, I don't share the details of.
Right. Yeah.
Right. There's people who do. So,
Yeah.
you know, but I haven't felt like that's something that I wanted to do at this point for a few reasons. For one thing, I know that the way that it was originally transmitted, it was transmitted orally in secret.
Yeah.
Only between certain people.
Yeah.
That's changing, and I think it should. But it's the prayers are still secret, and even the practitioner, they don't say them out loud. Like if you're having a cure done, they'll mumble it. You know, and this can get controversial because then people are like, well, that's like, is that gatekeeping? You know, and you know, I understand the question, but also, you know, some of it is words have power.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's some of it's not really that it's a secret. It's that it's sacred.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
you're not flippant. You're not just like sharing it with anybody who could maybe,
no. So, you know, there was, you know, what I call like social contracts in the community between people that everybody was aware of, including that this particular rite and other things were transmitted in a very particular way. And again, that way could be different from community to community and from family to family, but there was still always a particular way. Now, we have to be able to adapt. And so even in Italy, many practitioners who have, you know, stayed in intact lineages for generations are starting to share these practices or even these secret prayers with each other in ways that were different than they were originally shared, but they are still keeping a pretty good container in terms of who they're sharing it with and under what circumstances they're sharing it with. So like there is, you know, I do think there's room for adaptation. So in terms of my book, there's some things that are just very like, you know, they're very common. They're not anything that is particular to a particular family. You know, it's like you know, it's not like somebody's sauce recipe.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, you know,
Like
it's
the
very, you know,
charms.
it's very, you know, like the charms. It's like, you know, this is something that's always just done between anybody at any time. So in terms of specifics, that's what I shared. I'm not sharing things that I learned in sacred conditions and sacred situations with people.
Yeah. And what are the significance of the charms? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, every charm is different. So they're often what would be called apotropaic, which is like a fancy word for like it's protection, or it like I think literally is warding off evil. And so depending on the charm, often it's to prevent the maloke or the evil eye from coming on you. Could be so to prevent something. So you're wearing like, you know, I don't even know who this is. This is a saint. So that saint, whatever that saint was known for, you would get that type of protection. Like San Michele or Saint Michael has a certain type of protection. You know, the cello, the Italian horn, you know, that's always going to be for the maloke. But any kind of protection, you know, we know often Italian Americans would hang a cornicello from their rear view mirror in their car. So each charm is going to have like a little different type of or specific quality of protection. And it could also be for blessing. So it could just be like a blessing to wear something like that, or as a way to call in or channel the specific healing energy of whatever, a saint or a deity.
Makes sense. And what happens, or what is the significance of like a charm breaking or falling off your neck or something? Is that like you?
Well, that's going to be situational, right? So it could be you don't need it anymore.
Okay.
That would be the first thing that I would think of, is that you don't need it anymore. I mean, I guess you could take that as like a bad omen, maybe like a mirror breaking. I probably wouldn't. I would take it as, if that were the case, if I felt like it was that, then I would say, oh, that means, you need to do something for that saint, like an ex voto. An ex voto is like a post, just maybe people don't know what an ex voto is. So I'll just share that an ex voto is, so you petition a saint or a deity for something, I need my foot healed. And you go to the saint of feet. I don't know who that is. Jesus.
Yeah.
Washing the feet. Yeah.
Neptune. I don't know. So, and then your foot is healed after that. And then you go back to wherever, whether it was like a statue or a sanctuary or a grotto or whatever of that saint, and you bring them something as a form of thanks. And a lot of times it's like, so usually an ex voto will look like the body part that was healed.
Cool.
So you'll see like in churches in Italy, walls of like different body parts. They're usually made out of metal and they're like hung up, and that's the next photo. So, if it, like a charm broke or something like that happened, it, could mean a bunch of different things. And, whether it's like, I don't need that one anymore, maybe I need to switch to a different saint, or that saint needs something from me. Like maybe I need to repair the relationship somehow.
And so then maybe you would go to your divination method after a charm breaks and be like, all right, which is it? Like, do I need to make an offering to the saint, or
I mean, I think you would, you could, I would think that your circumstances would probably tell you.
It'd be obvious. Yeah.
Yeah.
If say you were trying to heal something or work with a situation and that thing resolved, and then the necklace broke or the charm broke, then I'd be like, I don't think you needed it anymore.
Yeah.
If the thing was ongoing or like got worse, then I would assume that, you needed to do something else.
Yeah.
You stub your toe and you're like, oh, better go get that.
Exactly.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, the thing I was thinking would be good to talk about is collectivism too, because you're talking about the social contracts being very important. And at the first Plant Cunning conference, we had a roundtable discussion kind of thing. What is it called? Panel. Yeah. And you were talking about how the healer in the village in Italy is like, everyone knows them. They know their grandparents. They know their children. It's not like you can take them out of the context of all those social contracts. So could you give us a little bit of an idea of collectivism, social contracts, and how that plays a part in healing traditions?
Right. Yeah. And this is one of those things that we live in a very individualist society.
Yeah.
And I do feel like collectivism is innate. It's instinctive for humans. I think even though we live in such individualistic times, and I'm not necessarily saying there's anything wrong with individualism. Like, I think that there's a time and a place, and it could be part of a phase in human evolution. I don't know. I'm just saying that, we definitely live in individualistic times, and it's very hard for individualists. So speaking for myself, Americans, to get attuned to this type of collectivism, because collectivism in this sense is really that you are not so much an individual as you are part of a collective. You're part of like a united organism, which in Italian culture and Italian American culture would be, first the family and the whole extended family. And then, usually your village or your parish, right? So you are, you're a person and you're separate, but at the same time, you're all moving together. And so so this is energetic. And in terms of like our magic, a lot of it is based on this idea of sharing, which I write about in my book. And sharing really is that, like, this idea that the vital force of the people circulates around the whole community. So the vital energy and the vital nourishment isn't just something that you have within the confines of your, your bones and your flesh. It's something that can be exchanged, and it's something that the community, the rituals and the practices of the culture actually work constantly. It's like built in, I don't even know, it's not even conscious really. It facilitates that to be distributed in a way that promotes the health of everybody.
Yeah.
And so this is one of the things, as an Italian, growing up in an Italian American community and an Italian American family, I really had a hard time with. I rebelled against, because obviously I was in public school, and in the United States, and, I want to do my thing. I want to do me. You know what I mean? I don't want my decisions I don't want the opinion of every single member of my family about, who I choose to date. Right. This is just an example, right? Of like, so it's like, it's like, I don't, this isn't the way we do it. This isn't the way my friends are doing it. And, a lot of it, there's gender stuff involved. So, if you're like an Italian American girl, there's certain expectations, and it's the same in Italian culture. And so it's very hard, I feel like, for these two things to like integrate. And this is like one of kind of my living questions, is like, because this tradition emerged out of this interdependence. Like, collectivism is really interdependence that is needed for survival. That's how come these communities were collectivist.
Mm-hmm.
It was survival.
Yeah.
So trying to recreate a collectivist network or collectivist type relationships without that ecological pressure.
Yeah.
Is, it's not the same. And I feel like we saw this in we see this in intentional communities.
Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with intentional communities. I think that's something we have to try and experiment with, but
just most fail.
Yeah, unfortunately.
The vast majority of them fail within 2 years. Right.
Because you don't need, as soon as you don't agree with somebody.
Yeah. You kick them out.
You kick them out, or you take yourself out.
Yeah.
It's like, I can go back, I can leave here anytime and go do whatever I want. So like, when that is not an option, then you've got to learn and practice, and you have to have frameworks for, like I said, distributing that vital force. Because if you've got conflict and you've got issues, and this is where some of what we call the Malocchio cures or any of our magics come in, where it's like the Malocchio is directly about this type of sharing, where somebody takes something from you or puts something on you. So Malocchio is really a taking. It's a taking of your vital force, which is why, like, babies, pregnant women, anybody that's like juicy in some way are susceptible.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Actually, this is kind of like getting into it a little further than maybe we need to, but a lot of it is based on the humors. And I don't know if it was consciously based on the humors, but for anybody listening who knows about the humors, it's about dryness or the elements. The Malocchio is a condition of dryness where somebody takes your juice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Right.
Yeah.
And so in a collectivist society, your juice could be taken.
Yeah.
Right. And so then the Malocchio, it gets kind of replaces it. It gets that back. So the village healer is one of the people in the community that are facilitating the vital force around the community by making adjustments in places where it needs to be made.
Yeah. Important.
It's important, but that's where it comes in, where it's like, okay, you've got this tradition that emerged really in this certain way. And now how are we adapting this?
Right. Yeah. So in a way that that the function of the village healer to facilitate the flow of vital energy in a community is not as necessary in an individualized society like in the US these days. So, but how has it
Well, the
adapted?
thing is,
And
it's
how do
still
you?
the thing is, people
Yeah.
are, the thing is, we're still, this is the thing, we're still all energetically connected,
Right. Yeah. Okay.
right?
Yeah.
But we're not acting that way,
Uh-huh.
right? And so people are still, you know, this is still, so the Maloke is also described as like envy or jealousy.
Right. I mean, I've
So it's like,
experienced that myself, my
right,
juice being taken by people who are envious. That I've seen that happen a lot,
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
right.
Yeah.
So these things are still it's still happening. It's
Right.
just that we're ignoring it. And I do think like that we have our own cultural ways of dealing with those types of things. Like it is what it is kind of thing. Like human beings are we are communal.
Yeah.
And so the way that communality, the way that expresses can change based on the infrastructure of the culture. So
Right.
if we have an individualist infrastructure, it doesn't mean that we're any less communal. It just means that it's going to show up differently. And the more we ignore it, the more it's going to go into the shadow.
Yeah. It seems as though we still have, I mean, community is very important and it's still part of everybody's life, but it's just a little bit more, it's a little less defined.
Yeah, and we also have such like it's not like a village context. It's like we have like a global village now, like with the internet and with, like how does that?
I know I had a friend
Okay.
asked me this question one time because, I was saying something about being local and she was like, what is local?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, is it local? Is it my local community, people I interact with on Instagram?
Yeah.
Is local my friend who lives in California who I text with every day?
Right.
Like I still think like that's kind of local,
Yeah, you're communicating every day, that
right?
you're
We're like we're
keeping them
sharing in each
close.
other's lives.
Might never talk to one of your neighbors in your entire
Yeah,
life.
right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It is a very strange situation we've got now. Like what even is community these days?
Mm-hmm.
And what is it going to be? I mean, I think that's
Yeah.
like the next question in terms of like, so the big question is, I mean, you kind of asked it like, why? Why even talk about these old folk traditions that are decontextualized at this point? And I think that is a question, is do these have do these have a value? Is there some energy that can be regenerated and re added to our cultural life in a way that is to the benefit of the communities that we're in and the way that we're in them now? And I think that's a question. I think that's a big question. I don't know.
But then again, I mean, people do experience being attacked psychically these days.
Yeah.
I mean, actually, there's a lot of people who think they are but aren't. But there are people who actually are. There are people who attack other people psychically without realizing that it's psychic. Who just brood on their envy and jealousy. And then that causes problems in the people that they focus that negative energy on.
So there was I think he was a psychologist. I'm not sure if he was a psychologist. He was an ethnographer, Ernesto D Martino, and he really looked at, like mid 20th century. Don't quote me on that, but a fairly recent archaeologist, not really archaeologist, anthropologist,
Yeah.
ethnographer, psychology, and he really looked at it from that view of not just the magical view, but also in the sacredness of it, but also the psychological aspects of it. And, what he came up with in terms of a lot of Italian folk medicine and magic, particularly around protection, was that our protection magic actually brings us into a stable sense of being.
Mm-hmm.
And when when we have a stable sense of being, when we're present, we are not susceptible.
Yeah, you're not as easily, your thoughts are not as easily
And
divert.
so the rituals and the practices of protection were that's actually what they were doing, is that they were creating a ground for the psyche.
Yeah.
And so then in that case, we all need that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why, like, certain like banishing rituals, like lesser banishing ritual, the pentagram or sphere of protection, these kind of like, they're orientation rituals too. You know, you're like going into the directions, you're calling in divinity, you know, and that's centering yourself and giving a ground for your psyche.
And they're somatic.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Right. And so, and that too does become, so that when done in a group or done collectively, that also becomes part of that like idea of sharing. So then you've got a community that is embodying that orientation or that grounding. Right. And then you've got clarity. And then your nervous system can facilitate energy better and the vital force better. And so that to me is like, well, who doesn't need that now?
Yeah.
Yeah, especially now.
You know, maybe we're dealing with different concerns.
Yeah. And the edges of the community are like, you know, the communities aren't as solid and with very obvious edges, and you can leave them to a certain degree. You can just fly across the country and start a new life or whatever, but there's still whatever community you're gonna be interacting with people wherever you are, unless you go out into Alaska and don't.
No,
But
and there's something to be said even then, you know, and I just saw some research on this and I lost it. It was like, it came through my feed somewhere and I didn't save it, but just how they are seeing how like even in great distances, people are influencing each other.
yeah, right. But
And
there's a side out of mind thing too, if you're not like,
right. Well, right. Then your focus is off it.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know. So what are some of the protection, the most common protection rituals and magics in the Italian folk traditions?
Well, charms,
Yeah.
amulets. Amulets is a big one. And we make these little like amulet bags that are called either brevi or abitini. And I think there's probably other names. Those are just a couple. And, you know, those are usually made in some type of ritual with a prayer or an intention for healing or a blessing for the person. And items are put in there. So there's objects that are considered protective, like charms, certain herbs, garlic.
Yeah.
Oh, garlic is a big one. And that was one of the ones, like when you're an Italian American kid and no one wants you to wear a garlic around your neck to school, that you're just like, as soon as you get out the door, that garlic's like going somewhere else, you know?
Yeah.
And then
Because
you get
that's
sick.
stupid. Then you get sick, but at least you didn't get beat up
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's a trade-off.
for smelling like garlic.
Yeah.
There are hand gestures, you know, one of the mano cornuto is which, you know, this, everybody thinks this is a heavy metal sign, and you know where that came from? Johnny Dio
Yeah.
was Italian American. He's Italian American, and he learned that from his grandmother.
Wow.
And it's a way to ward off the malocchio.
Like deflecting it.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah. That's probably a good thing if you're on stage all the time and
Yeah.
a metal band and
Heck
you
yeah.
get all sorts of unwanted attention.
You know, prayers, there's different prayers that can do it. So yeah.
Cool. So you talked about garlic, and in the book you have a couple of other plants that you go into in depth. Some of them are, well, they're all we all love plants here. This is the Plant Cunning Podcast. So would you mind if we got into a little bit?
No, I'd love to.
So the first one would be, you know, in terms of alphabetical, would be Belladonna, which I think is an often maligned plant, but also has a long history of of use and folklore, and I mean even the name Belladonna is,
It's an Italian name, actually.
yeah,
Yep.
beautiful lady, right? So yeah, what's Belladonna? Why are people scared of Belladonna? Why do people use Belladonna? What's
Well,
up?
people are scared of belladonna because it is poisonous.
Yeah.
So it's poisonous. It's also medicinal, and it is still. So this is interesting. It is still, we still use the chemical derivatives of belladonna in modern medicine. In fact, my son had a knee surgery, and after the knee surgery, they gave him a scopolamine patch that he put on his neck. And scopolamine is one of the active chemicals in belladonna. It's pain relieving.
Wow.
So belladonna is a pain reliever in terms of like, as it's for its medicinal uses, that's one of its medicinal uses. It's also hallucinogenic and was allegedly one of the main ingredients in flying ointments. So flying ointments are many formulations of herbs that were put into an unguento, which is a salve, which salves were and are one of the best ways to imbibe herbal medicine. So in southern Italy and many places, we didn't have in the past, we do now, but in the past, like alcohol tinctures, right? For one thing, we didn't even have that type of alcohol. Like that's, we didn't have vodka. Herbs would be wines and Amari bitters, different formulas would be put into different types of alcoholic beverages, but not like tinctures like we think of today. So one of the best ways to preserve and carry and transport an herbal remedy is as a salve.
Yeah.
So witches' salves, which also maligned, but witches' salves really could be for anything. Often they're going to be for some type of pain, but many herbs can be absorbed directly through the skin. Belladonna, so belladonna could be used as an herb for pain relieving and also formulated into usually with other herbs for like a psychedelic type of trance. So, and this kind of gets into some of those legends about the witches flying and were they actually flying? And nobody knows.
Yeah.
But what we have for evidence is that people who watch them like apply the salve would see them like go into like a very deep sleep. Like they were dead. And then after they woke up, they would say they flew.
Yeah.
So belladonna is also was used to like people use it, and I think this might be where the name came from, is that belladonna drops women would put them in their eyes to dilate their pupils because that was considered beautiful. So yeah, my first encounter with actual belladonna was in an Italian forest in the Apennine Mountains near Benevento, and there was wild belladonna growing. I know. It was just amazing. I took like 500 pictures. And it does grow here, so we can grow it. I have it growing in my garden.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, and then it also was one of the main poisons used, because I know like also like the Borgias were famous for using the poisons on their enemies. Right?
Yeah, so there's the famous poisoner, I think it was Tofana. Is it Julia Tofana? And it's the Aqua Tofana. And she was known as a poisoner, but I think she used arsenic as well.
Okay.
But she killed husbands.
Yeah.
Like abusive.
I mean, she was also an herbalist. Like she started this whole mutual aid network and it's like of healthcare. So like it wasn't like, but then also she was just like, I guess a feminist.
Yeah. She's like, we can't have this.
Yeah.
Gee.
Yeah.
So another plant also has dark berries, but right now it grows really well here and is loaded right now as the elder. Yeah, how is sambucus used in Italian folk tradition? Is it the same as it's used in
very similar, just how we use it. Also, it's a tree there.
Yeah.
So our native elder we have a couple native elders, but the one that we use in mainstream herbalism is Sambucus canadensis. And in Europe and Italy, it's Sambucus nigris, so it's a tree. So here ours are like a shrub, and they're a tree. And yeah, the uses are similar. A lot of the uses that we know of here that we're using our canadensis for came from the European uses. So yeah, berries and flowers mainly.
Mhm.
Some people use the leaves. Yeah.
So did you get to meet some elder trees?
Yeah.
Yep, I've never seen an elder tree that
Oh,
I can remember.
yeah.
Only bushes. So that's something, if I get to Europe again in the future, I'm gonna like find me a big elder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like a small tree, I would say. So they're like the size of like, do you know like box elders?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
they're kind of like a box elder in
Yeah.
Europe.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Sweet.
One of the other plants you have, which I also find very fun, and we grow actually an Italian variety of it. That's a wild variety. Is fennel. Fennel.
Yeah, Finocchio.
Pinocchio.
Yeah. So, so fennel is just part of pretty much every Amari or Amaro. Amaro means bitter.
Mhm.
And Amari is plural. And so in southern Italy, it's like very traditional to have kind of like your own village Amaro formula,
Right.
which could change from year to year
Okay.
Mhm.
depending on what's available. And fennel basically is a digestive. They also make something called like fennelcello or finocchietto, which is
Ooh.
it's like an amaro, but it's like the same process. So it's just like a simple sugar, like a sweet liqueur type of drink, and it's just fennel. So a lot of times, so this is kind of fun that like the way that you drink things in between courses. So in Italy, like AC, didn't you live in Italy for a while?
I
So
just was there for 6 weeks
oh,
and
okay. So
yeah.
but like there's, they come with courses.
Yeah.
Like they don't
Right.
just study, right? It's like,
Yeah.
it's a whole thing. And so, the Amaro could happen like before, like the bitter Amaro could happen like before or after. Usually there's going to be wine before, and then you're going to have the Amaro after. But in between, sometimes they'll give you like another like digestive drink. And that's when I've had like fennelcello or finocchietto. So it's really like just a sweet liqueur that helps you in between courses. And then you might have your Amaro after, and then your espresso.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
a digestive, usually made into the way that we use it is usually made into some type of digestive beverage.
And so if like I have a ton of fennel seeds right now, they're like the green seed, they're not quite brown yet. And I feel like they're just like asking to be made into some sort of delicious sweet drink. So would you recommend like, I don't know if you've messed
Yeah,
with
I add the seeds.
Yeah.
So like I would do like you could do like I love the bulb the best, really. But I always add seeds to any Amaro that I'm making, or if I'm just making a fennelcello, I'll add the seeds as well.
I want to make fennicello. I'm gonna have to like hit you up for the recipe because
Yeah, for sure.
Well, this Amaro thing too. It's like
Mhm.
it seems as though there are all these different cordials or
Yeah.
herbal cores, and depending on where you are, and this seems to be like one of the main, yeah, as you're saying, one of the main ways of imbibing
Mhm.
herbs. But it seems also like something that we don't do that much in the U.S., which we should do. But do you make a lot of Amaro? You make Amaro every year?
Yeah, I make Amaro. Yep.
Nice.
So
Yep.
what do you put in it? What are like the
Oh, all
herbs?
right. So I gather herbs here, right? So I put dandelion. So it's a combination, but I usually put some kind of berry. So you could put elderberry this time of year, fennel. I'm just like going through my backyard, basically. Dandelion. You could do chicory leaves, mugwort. You could put some golden seal. Yeah, like I'll just go around all the digestive herbs that are growing around me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll buy, I might buy, you could certainly go to the store and buy stuff if you wanted to put in it. But basically you're going to do like it's bitters because it's going to help your digestion.
Mm-hmm.
And then you infuse it in
And you
alcohol.
do alcohol. So usually it is a high percentage. You're going to use like a high percentage alcohol because you make a simple sugar to go with it. So I I actually do have a course on my website. It's like a pre-recorded course that goes through all of the like different digestive herbs
Oh,
that
nice.
I would put into an Amaro. So if people are interested in understanding it further, but you can also just like, you can find a lot of information on Google.
Yeah.
There's no exact recipe. And so so you kind of like, it's kind of like basically make like a tincture kind of, and then with all the herbs and some alcohol, and then you strain that, and then you make a simple sugar, which I always just do it with sugar, but I think you could do it with honey. I can't remember if I've ever done it with like honey or maple syrup.
They make it into a liqueur.
And you
So
make it into a liqueur. And there are non-alcoholic
like
versions, so I just feel like that's important to mention that they're not just won't preserve as long if you do it like
So in
without.
that case, would you like boil the herbs down in a decoction and then add sugar to like equal parts? Like if you have 1 cup of
Yeah,
decoction.
you could do that. You could do that. It's just really like you just want to you'd probably just do it like a syrup, I would say.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds good. I'm so inspired to go make some Amaro now.
Yeah.
yeah, also it's a good thing to have a digestif or
Yeah.
before dinner, after dinner.
Mhm.
It's really important, and it's something we don't really do so much in the US culturally anymore.
And I don't know, I'll never have the answer to this, and I've talked to a lot of people about it, but my health and well-being and my digestion always improves when I'm in Italy.
I know.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
I know like I've never
Everybody
met
says that.
anybody who said that it didn't. And so, then the people are like, well, it's the GMOs, or it's the glyphosate, or it's the um, there's a whole bunch of potential reasons. And, but I'm also like, yeah, and also like
There's a lot of herbs.
that there's a way of eating that really seems to help your digestion, and it includes digestives. Even if it's just espresso, like everybody gets a little espresso after dinner.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, the food, I mean, it's kind of amazing like how much food you can eat. Like all this like really good nutritious but also like bread and pasta and stuff, but if you like
Awesome.
force it out and then you have some or like digestive herbs and then the espresso to finish, it's like and you don't feel wrecked like even you might after having one small meal in the US like at a restaurant,
Oh,
you know
yeah.
instead of all these courses. But yeah, and there's like an aspect of like seasonal eating I noticed there. Like you just don't have as much access to food that's out of season, and it's like seemingly grown like within the region in the stores, and it's not being shipped from Mexico or wherever, not
And that's the
harvested
other
when
thing,
it's not ripe and there's not as much minerals in it, there's some factors going on. But yeah, maybe Italian's government isn't trying to like poison them,
Well,
like
they have purity. They have actual laws. Like they
yeah, they
can
actually
use
care.
certain flours for their pastas. Like they have laws. They're like purity laws.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be nice. Yeah. Sweet. Now I'm like craving some Italian food.
Always.
Always. I know. Yeah. So a couple other plants we wanted to highlight with you too. One is one of my dear friends, Rose.
Hmm.
Do you talk about Rose in the book?
Rosa canina.
Mm.
So that's their wild rose.
Okay. So like our multiflora kind of, or
Wow.
I guess that's
Yeah,
not.
it looks like it actually looks like
It does. Okay.
our multiflora is invasive.
Yeah.
That's their like native rose.
Okay, cool.
And then there's all kinds of different roses, but that's like the main wild one that you see everywhere.
Cool. And it's white flower?
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah.
And how do you incorporate that into medicine or food or magic?
Yeah, so I make a rose glycerite,
Yeah.
and it's just my favorite way. I don't make a lot of glycerites, but rose is the one every year. I make a rose glycerite. Then the other way is I make rose water with just like I do it like with a big canning pot, and you flip the lid over. This is like the kitchen. This is
Right.
a fancy way. And you collect the water. So rose water for like creams and that kind of thing. Yeah. So for me, mainly I'm using like the glycerite or tea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, it's like a heart application, like you would use it for anything related to the heart and like
Heart, grief, anxiety.
Yeah.
For a while, I don't know why I kind of fell out of practice. Maybe I don't need it anymore, but for a long time, I never went anywhere without my rose glycerite. Like I had it in the like center console of my car. There was always some in my purse. And like if if I got overwhelmed, which I do sometimes, or overstimulated, it was like take some rose. It's kind of like a rescue remedy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. I've definitely see that. I've seen it work, in that way for
Yeah.
people who are like in a stressful situation. It's like, would you care for just a few drops of rose glycerin? And then you just see their whole like body relax and their shoulders drop and,
I mean,
maybe
if I don't have anything and I'm around roses, like if I'm usually like this is in Italy and I'm like, I just did this in Rome because I was in Rome for a few days. It was very hot and very crowded. And I was feeling just like, oh, and there was roses because there's roses everywhere. And I just picked some roses and I was just like smelling them, or I like put them on my heart. I put them on my pillow. So just rose petals.
Yes. Yeah. They're so dainty, but so powerful.
Mm.
Crazy.
Yeah. Very, very soothing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this has been a really fun conversation so far. I'm really excited for your book that you're getting that out. What was the process like? Because I know when we first talked to you, you were writing it, and it seemed like you put a lot of work into it. So you excited for it to be finally be out into the world?
Yeah, yeah, I'm glad it's done. It was several years of work. It came out of the course that I teach.
Mhm.
I started teaching, so a lot of it was like, oh, as I was teaching, I was finding like things sort of were starting to categorize themselves in a way. And yeah, and then just as I had more and more experiences, there were more and more things to add to the categories. So yeah, it was a lot of work. I spent some time in Italy. A lot of it came from my growing up. A lot of it came from being in an Italian American community. A lot of it came from Some of it came from research that I did. I think alluded a little bit, but it wasn't really cool to be Italian American when I was growing up Italian American. So I really like rejected. Once I got old enough to kind of I broke away. And so some of it was like a reclamation for me of new understanding and building a new relationship with my ancestors and my lineage. And then, kind of bringing all those things together.
It's amazing. Beautiful. Yeah.
Thanks.
And would you mind telling the listeners about the course and what your teaching offerings?
Yeah, so I have a few offerings, but the main one right now is a course also called Della Medicina. It's a 9-month course. It's really like a training, mentorship, and practice circle where we go through several of the aspects of folk medicine based on Italian and Italian American folk medicine. So it's not just for people who are of Italian descent. It's really for anybody, but it is based on because that's what I know the most of.
So where can people find that? And
Therootcircle.com, and I'm on Instagram. I don't even know what my handle is. At the Root Circle, I think.
Yeah.
And on Instagram, Lisa Fazio on Instagram. So everything's on my website, and I do my best to get everything on Instagram that's going on. Facebook, I'm on Facebook too, but that's not as consistent.
Mm-hmm.
cool. Well, congratulations on the book, and yeah, I wish you much well in it.
Thank you. Thanks
Yeah,
for having me.
Yeah,
that's
thanks for being
lovely.
on the show. We always like talking with you. Hope to
Same.
see you soon. Okay,
Right.
cheers.
Cheers. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.